Hey everyone, we're talking about Tarkir Dragonstorm Commander decks today. Let's get into it. Today, we're going to be talking about everything that is inside these commander decks. Is it worth it for you to snag one of these? What all is in there? What kind of stats we're looking at? All that kind of good stuff. And we're just going to kick things right off with the financials. We're going to take a look at what all is in there, reprint value, and see what's going on. Overall, I think these decks aren't super great when it comes to the financial. We're not looking at some hot prices here. We've got 5 decks to cover, so we're just going to jump right in. First deck up we've got is Temur's Roar. This is obviously the Temur deck, and we're looking at about $107 worth of singles here. It's going for about 97 bucks here. We're not talking about any of the new cards, so obviously the new cards will bump it up, but those do have a tendency to fall off, like they're going for $7, $8. But once the decks are actually out and they're not the newest thing on the block, those kind of plummet unless they're very good. So we're just going to ignore those. We're just going to focus on the reprint value. We've got 107 bucks, as I said, but if you look at the cards that are just $2 or more, that's only 73 bucks here. So not doing great in terms of reprint value. This deck is definitely getting sold off hype because the deck does play very well. In all the content that I've watched, the deck seems to run easily out of the box, and it's a ton of fun to play. If we look at the number of cards that are $2 and up, that's only 12 cards. We've got 7 cards that are $5 and up, and only 1 card that is $10 and up. If we look at those cards, number 1, we've got Hellkite Courser. This is an $18.60 card. We've got Nogi Draco Zealot coming in at $7.60. Savala's Stampede at $7.30. Dragon Tempest, which actually worked its way up to $7, and then the 5th card here is Sarkhan Soul of Flame at $6.66. So those are top 5 cards in terms of reprint value. Overall, I think it's fine. As you'll see in the playability, I think it plays a lot better than it is worth, and I think that's going to be a theme just usually for commander decks these days, especially in the standard rotation. But those are the reprint values for Temur's Roar. Moving on. Next, we've got Abzan Armor. This deck is going for $53.47. It still has about $104 worth of singles, although if you do look at the $2 and up price, this gets back down to 78 bucks. If we look at the number of cards 2 and up, that's 14. We've got 6 for $5 and up, and again, only 1 card that is $10 or more. Top cards in this deck in terms of reprints, we've got Dragon Lord Dramoka coming in at $10.80. Next, we've got Towering Titan at $9.86, Indomitable Ancients at $9.54, Weathered Sentinels at $8.92, and Seedborn Muse at $8.50. The deck is a decent value. You're not getting a ton for your money, but you're also not having to pay as much as some of the other decks. So yeah, it's not too bad in terms of financials. Next, we've got Sultai Arisen. This deck is going for $84.30 on TCG Player. The singles are worth about $99.12. If we look at the $2 and up price, it's going for about 75 bucks. So it's in range with the other 2 decks that we just looked at. Not too bad. 12 cards are $2 and up. 7 cards are $5 and up, and again, just 1 card, $10 and up. Top reprints, we've got Obnixilis the Fallen at $12.46, Hedron Crab, a mighty $8.17, Life from the Loam, $7.97, Douthie Voidwalker, $7.76, and Command Beacon for $7.36. Decent reprints there, even though we're still not getting a ton of value. I do like the reprints in here. I think these are more easily moved around than the previous decks into other archetypes and other decks that you would want to possibly play. So if you're just trying to pick it apart, you know, there's some decent value in there. 4th deck up is Mardu Surge. This deck is going for $48.70. The singles are going for 90 bucks on the open market, although if you just look at the $2 and up, they're only going for 63. So this is the worst one yet in terms of reprint value. We've got 12 cards in the $2 and up bin. We've got 5 in the $5 and up, and again, just the 1 in the $10 and up. Best card in this deck in terms of reprint value, we've got Grand Crescendo at $13.25, followed by Gix Yawgmoth Praetor at $7.50, Shattered Sanctum up next at $7.10, Skullclap at a nice $6.70, and then rounding it out with Divine Visitation at $5.45. Not too bad, especially for the price. It doesn't play super great compared to the other decks, so it's definitely lower on the price scale here. You know, it's not a bad pickup. You will get some money back in terms of reprint. Last on the list is Jeskai Striker. This deck is going for $43.38. The singles are only worth 71 bucks, but if you look at the $2 and up, it's $35. Oh, this one is just the worst when it comes to reprint value. Just rough. $9 in the $2 and up pile. We've got one card in the $5 and up pile and nothing in the $10 and up pile. Top 5 cards for this, we're looking at Veyron, Voice of Duality at $6.50, Ghostly Prison at $4.40, Narset's Reversal at $4.30, Lear, Disciple of the Drowned at $4.27, and Archmage Emeritus at $3.93. Honestly, this one is pretty rough. If you're buying this deck, it's good to play with. I think it's priced right to play. This is a great price if you just want to get in there and do some Jeskai fun, flurry stuff. But in terms of reprint value, this one is bad. Overall, there isn't a ton of financial value here in terms of reprints, but let's talk about playability. Let's look at some of the metrics that we see when we're kind of looking and trying to figure out what makes a good commander deck. So we're actually using the Command Zone's most recent template. I agree with them. I think it's a solid baseline. You know, we can split hairs here or there, but I think it's a good and easy way for us to kind of just look at the decks and see how they stack up versus, you know, what we would consider kind of a baseline for what types of cards we'd expect in a deck. So looking at what the baseline is, we've got 10 ramp cards, 12 card advantage spells, 12 targeted removals, 6 mass removals, 38 lands, and then 20 cards that are kind of like the main game plan of the deck or propel the main game plan, and then 10 utility cards that enhance that game plan. Starting again with Temur, we've got 13.5 ramp spells, which makes sense for a Simic style deck. We've got 11 card advantage spells, but we do have card advantage in the command zone, so we've got a good boost there. 9 targeted removal spells, which is a little light, but you do get to put a lot of big creatures on, so you're trying to be more of the problem than you are the solution to stuff with this, so that kind of makes sense. Really light on wipes, mass removal, that kind of thing. You don't see a ton of wipes in precons when it comes to these colors, so it makes sense in that regard, but just know that this deck is a little light on the mass removal side. 37 lands, we basically see that in all but one deck. They just do 37 across the board for the precons. We've got 24 cards in the main and 7 in the utility. This one is a little hard to judge in terms of main versus utility. This is basically because everything is cost a ton, so because of that, it kind of falls with the main game plan. Basically, you're just trying to churn and create a huge, massive board state. There's a couple ways to enhance that, but overall, most cards are in this deck are basically straight-lined, propelling you towards doing so. After that, we've got Abzan Armor. We've got 14 ramp spells, actually quite a bit here. There's a lot of mana dorks, though, so take that with a grain of salt, just because they typically do have a high butt to front ratio, power to toughness thing. What you're looking for, it's a butt stack, so they got big butts. Card advantage is only 6, but you do have really, really good card advantage stapled to the commander, so that's probably why they pulled some of that back, although I would say if you were looking to upgrade, that would be an area I would consider adding to. Targeted removal of 7, that's pretty fine. You can definitely go up higher. Mass removal is 3. This is fine for a precon. Obviously, you know, templating, we want a little more in 2025, but in terms of a precon, I think 3 is fine. If you want to add more, you're more than welcome to. Lands, we've got 38. That's the highest land count of all the decks. Main, we've got a much better split here. We've got 24 in the main, 17 utilities. It's pretty easy to get stuff that's actuating on the main game plan here, as well as filling a lot of other roles, because the main game plan is just play big butts. So there are plenty of cards that let you do that while, you know, doing other things. And you do have a solid number of utility cards that have been printed over the years, and especially now in this deck, that do help progress that. Next, we've got Sultai Arisen. We've got 13.5 ramp spells again, which is solid. 10 card advantage spells. Targeted removal is 7. That's decent. Again, you know, it's kind of what we're seeing in these decks. 7 is it's good. It's not great. In watching some gameplay and how all these decks kind of interact with each other in the board state, it does really seem to be like they are definitely reduced on removal. Many of the gameplay videos that I've watched so far, at least, basically everyone was just kind of doing their own thing. And again, we see only 2 wipes here for the mass removal, 37 lands, and then we've got a pretty even split here in main utility. This one is a little tough to judge just because with the secondary commander being a whole life gain thing, there's a ton of extra life gain stuff in here, which has nothing to do with the main commander. I would say this is probably the more challenging of the deck. Looking at just how they've split up the payoffs and utility pieces that work work between the two different commanders. They don't really have a good mesh together, so this deck could run a little clunkier than the other 4, just in, just looking at the cards and seeing what I've seen so far. Mardu Surge is next up. We've got 8 ramp spells, which not a ton. Card advantage, we've got 10 spells here. Again, we're just a little light. Targeted removal, again, pretty light, especially for considering these colors. You could definitely get more targeted removal in there. Mass removal, again, it's at a 2. They just didn't put a ton of wipes in a couple of these decks. 37 lands is the standard, and we're seeing 23 main synergy cards and 16 kind of utility cards. There's a lot of token making in this. You can do a lot of stuff, but you have a tendency to gas out. There are some very clear additions to this in terms of card draw, Caretaker's Talent, things that are triggering off your tokens, that kind of thing. That would be very nice includes, because Mardu decks do kind of have a tendency to gas out, and while you do have some card draw in the command zone, it is a little tougher to trigger. That's why those sack outlets are in there, and they're so important. It's not just as easy as the Abzan deck where you just tap your commander, draw some cards. This one you have to make sure that you have a sack outlet, or something dies during combat, or you're able to do sack a token during combat, or else you're just not going to get that draw, which is what you want. Finally, we've got Jeskai Striker. This has got 12.5 ramp spells, which is crazy to think that the Jeskai deck has more ramp than the Mardu one. But we've got 13 card advantage spells. That actually does make sense. Jeskai is known for spinning its wheels and doing nothing and then losing, but it's a ton of fun to play. Targeted removal, we've got the highest count of them all, as well as mass removal. We've also got the highest count of them all. So plenty of ways to be the bad guy in the Jeskai deck, especially when the deck is centered around copying spells. In a Spell Slinger deck, you do get a high amount of interaction, which is great, alongside your cantrips. 37 lands, which is solid. Again, it's the same count we've been seeing. 16 cards that are like mainline focused, this is what we're doing, and 10 utility cards to help support the strategy there. While I poo-pooed on the Jeskai deck for being a poor financial value, in terms of playability, everything I've seen, the deck actually runs great. It does the classic Spell Slinger Jeskai stuff where it does a bunch of flashy stuff, gets a ton of cards churning, you're doing tons of game actions, you probably end up losing anyway because you don't have a solid finisher, but Magma Opus is in the deck, I guess, so that's kind of neat. I mean, I love Jeskai, it's a ton of fun to play. If you like that kind of play style, you like copying spells, that kind of stuff, yeah, it plays very, very well despite its very low reprint value. So those are the commander decks for Tarkir Dragonstorm. Overall, I think it's a pretty solid offering, especially for a standard set. I would hesitate to buy any of these for $100. Just wait till they come out. MSRP is supposed to be $44.99, so I definitely wouldn't try and pay more than that. Now you have the value, so you can make your own decisions if it is a good choice for you or not. In terms of single cards, I'm not going to cover those today. There are a few things that I think are interesting. I like all the Will of the Clan things, so like Will of the Jeskai, Will of Temur, that kind of stuff. I think those cards are cool, but I didn't want to go into and make like a 15-minute video where I explain and talk through every single card that is new for the commander decks, or that is new to Commander. But if that's something you want me to do, I'm happy to do it. I just didn't want to make this video 20 minutes long for no reason. Beside that, I'll be doing the set EVs closer to pre-release. Maybe it may come a little after pre-release just to get a little more numbers in there, as well as the card I'm going to be speccing on for the set. Last time I did a commander card, hashtag is not going super great for me. I don't know if I'm going to do a card out of the main set or a card out of the commander set yet. There's a couple that I have my eye on, but I haven't made that decision yet. Anyways, I hope you like that. If you do and you want to see more of these commander breakdowns, if this was useful to you, please leave a comment. Please hit the subscribe button. It helps out a lot. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.